Picture this. It's Friday afternoon. You've had an incredibly long, just a grinding week.
Well, we all know that feeling.
Right. Your brain feels like a browser with 90 tabs open, and, 89 of them are just completely frozen.
Yeah, you're just running on fumes at that point.
Exactly. You are finally ready to collapse on your couch. You can almost taste the weekend, and then out of nowhere, your phone buzzes on the desk.
Yeah.
You look down. It is your coworker.
The dreaded Friday afternoon text.
The absolute worst. The message pops up, "Hey, can you help me finish this report? It'll only take 1 hour."
Just 1 hour. It's never just 1 hour.
Never.
Yeah.
But you sit there staring at those words. You feel that sudden tight drop in your stomach. You think about your evening. You feel the exhaustion deep in your bones, and you type back, "Sure, no problem."
And you hit send, basically just completely betraying your own needs in the span of, 3 seconds?
Pretty much.
Just visualizing that scenario triggers a visceral response.
Yeah.
When we look at the source material for this deep dive, it becomes overwhelmingly clear that this isn't just some minor workplace annoyance.
No, it really isn't.
It is a universal psychological phenomenon. Our mission today is to unpack the profound, often hidden complexities of the art of saying no. We are looking at a stack of research that dissects why a tiny two-letter word no acts as this massive emotional tripwire for almost everyone.
Yeah, regardless of culture or background, too. It's wild.
Exactly. We say yes to everything, and it's slowly exhausting us.
Okay, let's unpack this tripwire. Because inside, when you hit send on that sure no problem text, you are frustrated.
You're deeply
You
frustrated.
desperately wanted to decline, but you did it anyway. And this extends way beyond the office.
Oh, for sure. It's the friend who constantly uses you as an unpaid therapist.
Yes. Or the family member expecting you to host every single holiday. You sit there, you smile, and you agree, while internally, your energy reserves are just flashing red.
Like a check engine light you're actively ignoring.
Right, so we need to figure out why this happens. Why does declining a simple, low-stakes request feel like a monumental life or death threat?
Well, to get to the root of that, we actually have to bypass modern psychology and go straight into evolutionary biology.
Wait, really? Biology?
Yeah. The feeling of a threat to your survival when you consider saying no, it isn't a metaphor. It is the literal mechanism of your brain's architecture.
Okay, that makes it sound a lot more serious than just being polite.
It is. The research points heavily to how the human amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, processes social dynamics. We are fundamentally social animals.
Right, because physically speaking, humans are rather pathetic compared to apex predators. Like, we don't have claws or thick hide.
Exactly. We survived because we formed groups. Our entire evolutionary advantage was cooperation.
So we needed the tribe to survive.
That is the core of it. If you trace our neural pathways back to their origins in hunting and gathering societies, group cohesion was literally the only barrier between you and starvation. You shared resources, you protected the perimeter together. In that environment, causing friction or being perceived as unhelpful wasn't just a social faux pas.
It was a huge risk.
A massive one. If the group decided you were a liability and ostracized you, it equated to a death sentence. The wilderness was lethal.
Which means, well, it means our modern brains are essentially running on legacy hardware.
Legacy hardware. I love that phrasing.
It's like we are sitting in these climate-controlled apartments in the 21st century looking at a Slack message on a glowing rectangle.
Yeah.
But our amygdala is interpreting the request to review a spreadsheet as a test of our tribal utility.
Yes.
If we say no, the brain sounds an alarm that we are going to be exiled into the frozen tundra and eaten by wolves.
And the neuroscience backs that up completely. Functional MRI scans show that the brain processes social rejection in the exact same neural regions that process physical pain.
You mean it physically hurts to say no?
Basically, yes. The somatosensory cortex lights up. When you even contemplate saying no to your coworker, your nervous system anticipates that pain.
That explains the stomach drop.
Exactly. Your heart rate elevates, cortisol is released, your chest tightens. It is an ancient biological alarm system doing brilliant work.
It just happens to be firing in the wrong epoch.
Precisely. The threat of a saber-toothed tiger is gone, but the biological panic of social exile remains entirely intact.
But if we just blame biology, I feel like we are letting ourselves off the hook way too easily.
That's a fair point.
Because from the moment we are old enough to understand language, there is this thick layer of societal conditioning poured right over that biology.
Oh, absolutely. The cultural messaging is intense.
Right. We are explicitly taught that saying yes is the definition of being a good person. We praise children for being accommodating, for sharing, for putting others first at all costs.
Always put others first. It's practically a mantra.
So the friction here is that I genuinely want to be a kind person. How am I supposed to separate authentic generosity from this primal evolutionary panic?
Well, that distinction between genuine kindness and reflexive accommodation, that is where the concept of people-pleasing really comes into play in the sources.
People-pleasing, we hear that term a lot.
We do, but we often misunderstand it. The sources emphasize that people-pleasing is often disguised as virtue, but the underlying motivation is radically different from true kindness.
How so?
A genuinely kind person chooses to offer help from a place of surplus and agency. They have the energy, and they decide to give it.
Okay, that makes sense.
But a people-pleaser operates from a deficit of boundaries. They help because they are terrified of managing the other person's potential disappointment.
Oh, wow. So people-pleasing is actually a form of control in a weird way.
It really is.
We are saying yes to manipulate the other person's perception of us to ensure they keep liking us, rather than actually caring about the task itself.
That is a profound way to look at it. You are trying to engineer their emotional state so your own anxiety doesn't spike.
Wow, that's a little uncomfortable to admit.
It is uncomfortable. On the outside, the people pleaser looks like the ultimate team player. They're organizing the birthdays, taking the late shifts, covering for everyone.
But internally?
Internally, the psychological profile is one of deep resentment and exhaustion. What brings us to a fascinating piece of research from Dr. Brené Brown that's highlighted in our sources.
Oh, Brené Brown. Her work always manages to expose those really counterintuitive human truths.
She's brilliant at it. She spent decades studying vulnerability and empathy, and her data on who actually exhibits the most compassion flips this entire dynamic on its head.
Okay, what did she find about the people who are constantly accommodating everyone, the perpetual yes people?
She found that they are actually the least sustainably compassionate.
Wait, really? The least?
Yes. According to her research, the most compassionate, generous people are those who possess the strongest, most impermeable boundaries.
That feels entirely paradoxical.
I know.
The kindest people are the ones rejecting requests the most.
The logic clicks into place when you consider the mechanics of a yes. Her central insight is that your yes is completely meaningless unless you are also entirely capable of saying no.
Oh, I see.
If your default setting is a reflexive yes to everything, the people around you never truly know if you actually want to help them, or if you're just trapped by your own inability to decline.
Right. Your agreement just becomes a counterfeit currency.
Exactly. Counterfeit currency.
That is a brilliant framing, because if no isn't a viable option on the table, then my yes isn't a gift, it's just a symptom of my anxiety.
Perfectly said.
But when a person with notoriously strong boundaries tells you they will help you, you know they mean it. The transaction is clean. There is no hidden resentment attached to it.
And that hidden resentment is just the tip of the iceberg. The source material pivots from the psychology of why we say yes into an incredibly stark audit of the hidden taxes we pay when we operate without those boundaries.
The hidden taxes. I like that.
We have to look at the collateral damage of being the perpetual yes person, starting with the baseline mathematics of how we spend our days.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because we usually treat time as this elastic thing, we can always stretch just a little further.
Right, like we could always squeeze in one more task.
Exactly. But the sources introduce classic opportunity costs to shatter that illusion. Instead of looking at time as a zero-sum game, let's think about it like a strict daily energy budget. You only wake up with $100 of energy.
The energy budget is a much more accurate metaphor than time alone.
Why is that?
Because taking on a stressful task drains you faster than taking on a joyful one. An hour of doing something you hate might cost 50 energy dollars, while an hour of reading a book might only cost 5.
Oh, that makes total sense.
The law of opportunity cost dictates that every decision to engage in one activity is a simultaneous decision to abandon another. It is inescapable.
So when I say yes to the coworker's Friday afternoon report, I am not just giving them an hour. I am actively bankrupting my evening. I am spending the energy dollars that were earmarked for being present with my family, or cooking a nutritious meal, or simply decompressing so my brain can actually function the next day.
You are. And the problem with people pleasers is they convince themselves they aren't making a choice.
They just think, oh, I'm just helping.
Right. They think they are just being nice.
Yeah.
But the reality is you are always saying no to something. Every single yes to the outside world, is an involuntary no to your inner circle, your goals, or your health.
You are just choosing to let the loudest, most immediate demand dictate where your budget goes rather than your actual values.
Exactly. And the cost to our health is where this moves from a philosophical issue to a critical medical warning.
Yeah, I think society tends to view boundaries as the sort of soft luxury concept, like scheduling a spa day or taking a mental health walk.
Right, like it's a bonus if you can fit it in.
But the physiological data in these sources paints a terrifying picture of what happens to the human body when it lacks a defense mechanism against external demands.
Terrifying is the right word. We can trace this directly back to that ancient biological alarm system we discussed earlier.
The amygdala.
Yes. When you are perpetually overcommitted, unable to say no, you live in a state of hypervigilance. You are constantly waiting for the next request to drop, anticipating the guilt of having to manage it.
So you never actually relax.
Never. This means your HPA axis, the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, is continuously activated, which floods your bloodstream with cortisol.
And cortisol is designed for a sprint, not a marathon. It's the hormone that makes you fight or flee.
In acute situations, cortisol is a lifesaver. It sharpens your focus and mobilizes glucose for immediate energy so you can run from danger.
Right.
But when it becomes a chronic baseline state, a condition researchers actually call high allostatic load, it acts like a corrosive acid in your system.
That sounds awful.
The sources detail the downstream effects. Severe sleep architecture disruption, meaning you never reach deep restorative REM sleep.
Which explains the constant exhaustion.
Yes. Your immune system is suppressed, making you highly susceptible to opportunistic infections. You're always catching colds.
The sources essentially list the symptoms of a severe systemic illness: chronic muscle tension, tension headaches, heightened baseline anxiety, clinical depression, and over the long term, significant cardiovascular risk.
It's massive.
Your body is physically buckling under the sheer weight of other people's expectations because your mouth refuses to say the word no.
The body keeps the score, right?
Yeah.
If you refuse to set a boundary verbally, your biology will eventually set a physical one for you, usually in the form of burnout or a serious illness.
And that physical collapse usually mirrors a professional collapse, which brings me to an incredibly illuminating case study in the sources.
Oh, Sarah's story.
Yes, the story about a woman named Sarah. She was a dedicated employee at a marketing firm. Looking at her trajectory, it seems like being the ultimate team player. The person who literally never says no actually actively sabotaged her upward mobility.
It completely stalled her career.
She became the foundational concrete of the company, which meant she couldn't be moved to the penthouse.
That visual of being the foundational concrete perfectly captures how corporate leadership evaluates talent. Sarah operated under the assumption that utility equals value.
So the more she did, the more valuable she thought she was.
Exactly. She took on every orphan project, covered every colleague's shift, and answered emails at midnight. She assumed this Herculean effort would naturally result in a promotion.
But her colleagues got promoted while she stayed put. The irony is staggering.
It really is.
By solving everyone else's micro-crises, she became a purely tactical worker. She was so busy being the office life raft that she stripped herself of the capacity to do deep, strategic work.
Leadership doesn't promote the person doing the most tasks. They promote the person driving the most impact.
Right.
Sarah's manager explicitly noted that while she was valued, they needed someone who could think strategically and manage their own workload. Her chronic yes didn't make her look like a leader.
What did it make her look like?
It made her look like someone entirely incapable of prioritization.
Ouch. She had to stop doing everyone else's jobs just to have the bandwidth to excel at her own. It's a brutal lesson.
Very brutal.
But surely, if saying yes wrecks our health and stalls our careers, the payoff must be in our personal lives, right?
You would think so.
We sacrifice ourselves so our friends and family will love us more. Yet the sources reveal a psychological trap here that actually destroys the very relationships we are trying to protect.
This is the tragic paradox of the people pleaser. The behavior is rooted in a desperate desire for connection, but the outcome is deep isolation.
That's so sad. Why does that happen?
To understand why, we have to examine the psychological architecture of resentment. Resentment is not a spontaneous emotion. It is manufactured.
Manufactured how?
It thrives in the fertile ground of covert contracts.
A covert contract. That sounds like I'm making a deal with someone without ever telling them the terms of the deal.
That is exactly what it is. When you consistently say yes to a friend or partner, when you are exhausted, you secretly expect them to recognize your sacrifice. You think, I am doing this massive favor for them, so they owe me appreciation, or they owe me the same level of sacrifice in the future. But you never communicated that. You just said, sure, no problem.
So you train them to view your time as infinite and cheap.
Yes.
And because human nature gravitates toward the path of least resistance, they keep asking. They aren't doing it maliciously. They literally think you don't mind because you never said you minded.
And this is exactly where the resentment ferments. You start keeping a silent ledger of all the times you've compromised your needs for them.
Keeping score.
Yes. You become bitter. You start pulling away emotionally, offering passive-aggressive remarks, or simply avoiding their calls.
So the relationship fractures not because they ask too much of you, but because you refuse to be honest with them about your limits.
Precisely. The story of Ahmed in the sources is the perfect illustration of this trap.
Oh, Ahmed's story is so relatable. He is the guy everyone calls. He drives 2 hours on his only day off to help a friend move.
Without complaining.
Right. He lends out money. He answers midnight crisis calls. He truly believes he is building a fortress of loyalty around himself through his utility.
But the internal reality is that Ahmed is chronically sleep-deprived, financially stressed, and harboring intense anger toward his friend group.
He feels profoundly alone despite being surrounded by people who need him.
Yes. And then we get the climax of his story, which is so illuminating. Ahmed is pushed to his absolute limit and finally declines a last-minute favor.
Right. He tells a friend, I can't today, I have plans.
And he braces for the impact. He expects the tribe to exile him.
And his friend's response is simply, oh, okay, no worries.
That casual no worries completely shatters Ahmed's worldview. It instantly exposes the fact that the catastrophic social death he feared was entirely a hallucination manufactured by his own anxiety.
Wow.
His friends didn't require his martyrdom. They just accepted it because it was offered.
It's liberating, but also, a little embarrassing to realize that people don't think about us nearly as much as our anxiety tells us they do.
That's the truth.
But there is a second story in the sources that cuts even deeper than resentment. It's the story of Maria, and it deals with the ultimate cost of a boundaryless life, the complete erosion of identity.
Maria's narrative is particularly common in caregiving roles. She operated on the deeply ingrained cultural narrative that love requires total self-abnegation.
Just giving everything away.
Right. She said yes to every PTA request, yes to her husband's deferral of the domestic load, yes to her extended family's demands. For 2 consecutive years, she operated solely as a conduit for other people's needs.
She essentially hollowed herself out to serve as a vessel for everyone else. The sources mentioned she used to be an avid reader, she used to paint.
Yes.
But all of that was stripped away. She didn't just lose her hobbies, she lost the architecture of her own personality.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the psychological term for this is enmeshment leading to identity diffusion.
Identity diffusion.
Yes. When you spend every waking hour accommodating others, the boundary between where you end and others begin dissolves. You forget what your own preferences even are.
Every time you say yes when your soul is screaming no, you are sending a neurological mandate to your own brain.
You are.
You are validating the belief that your desires are secondary, that your existence is purely instrumental. You are destroying your own self-respect brick by brick.
It's impossible to maintain authentic self-esteem when you are in a continuous state of self-betrayal. Reclaiming your ability to say no is not a time management hack. It is a fundamental retrieval of your own personhood.
So what does this all mean? We know the biological traps, we understand the devastating opportunity costs, the allostatic load on our health, and the silent death of our relationships and identities.
The stakes are existential.
They really are. But the transition from understanding this to actually looking a colleague in the eye and refusing a request, that is a massive chasm. How do we cross it?
We cross it by equipping ourselves with an explicit, highly specific linguistic toolkit. The sources we are analyzing are specifically curated for B2 level English learners, which is actually brilliant.
Why is that brilliant?
Because it forces us to look at the exact mechanics of the language. We aren't dealing in vague advice like, be more assertive. We are looking at the exact syntax of a successful boundary.
I love that. Let's define assertive before we get into the phrases, because I think a lot of people equate setting a boundary with initiating a conflict.
Yes, they view communication on a binary. You are either a passive doormat or an aggressive jerk.
Exactly.
But that false binary is the main reason people avoid boundaries altogether. Passive communication prioritizes the other person's needs entirely. Aggressive communication prioritizes your needs by steamrolling the other person.
So where does assertiveness fit in?
Assertiveness is the cognitive and linguistic sweet spot. It is the ability to articulate your needs and limits clearly, directly, and respectfully without hostility, but also without shrinking yourself.
It's communicating from a place of secure grounding, like, I respect your right to ask, and I respect my right to decline.
Precisely.
Okay, let's deconstruct these 5 assertive English phrases from the text. I don't just want to list them. I want to reverse engineer exactly why they work psychologically and when to deploy them.
Let's do it.
Let's start with phrase number 1. I appreciate you thinking of me, but...
The genius of this phrase lies in its opening clause. I appreciate you thinking of me. Acts as a profound psychological buffer.
A buffer.
Yes. When someone makes a request of you, their ego is somewhat exposed. If you hit them with a blunt no, their own amygdala might interpret that as a social rejection sparking conflict.
Oh, I see. So you are preemptively de-escalating their threat response. You are validating their response to come to you. You are saying, I see you and I value that you value me.
Exactly. You soften the conversational ground. Then, the conjunction but acts as a pivot, transitioning smoothly into the boundary. But I won't be able to commit to that right now.
That is smooth.
It is a highly mature, polished phrase that works exceptionally well in hierarchical environments, like declining a project from a manager or turning down an invitation from a respected acquaintance.
Makes total sense. Phrase number 2 removes the buffer entirely. It is just, that doesn't work for me.
Yes.
My initial reaction to this is that it sounds almost too cold. Where is the apology? Where is the excuse?
The absence of the apology and excuse is exactly what gives this phrase its structural integrity. When you offer an excuse like, I can't make the 7 a.m. meeting because traffic is bad and I have to walk the dog, you are unintentionally providing the other person with an attack surface.
An attack surface? You mean you are inviting them to negotiate?
Yes.
Oh, traffic is bad. Just jump on the Zoom call from your car. You have to walk the dog. Have your partner do it.
Exactly. You've turned a boundary into a problem-solving exercise for them.
I hate when that happens.
We all do. That doesn't work for me. Is an impenetrable fortress. It is a neutral, factual statement of incompatibility. It does not judge their request, nor does it justify your refusal.
It just simply states that the puzzle pieces do not fit.
Right. It is incredibly effective with people who are prone to pushing your boundaries because it gives them absolutely nothing to grab onto.
It's a linguistic dead end for negotiators. I love it. Okay, phrase number 3 is a bit more colloquial. I'm going to have to pass on that.
The phrasal verb pass on inherently lowers the emotional stakes of the interaction. It is casual, upbeat, and devoid of heavy emotional baggage.
This feels like the perfect tool for social settings. The group is going to a loud bar after a conference. You are exhausted. And instead of giving a dramatic speech about your social battery...
You just say, I'm going to have to pass on that tonight, but you guys have an amazing time.
Yeah. It signals that you are entirely comfortable with your absence. You aren't wallowing in fear of missing out. And you aren't making them feel guilty for going. It's clean and breezy.
Very clean.
Phrase number 4 leans heavily on a classic idiom.
I've got a lot on my plate right now. Idioms are powerful because they evoke immediate visual metaphors. The plate represents your absolute bandwidth, your cognitive load, and your available hours. The tasks are the food.
And if you keep piling food onto a finite plate, eventually the mashed potatoes spill onto the floor and the plate cracks under the weight.
Exactly. In a professional setting, this phrase is highly respected because it reframes the rejection. You aren't saying no out of laziness or spite.
Right.
You are saying no out of a fierce commitment to the quality of the work already on your plate. It signals to your colleagues or boss that you understand your capacity limits, which is a hallmark of a highly competent professional.
It transforms the no into an act of responsibility. Like, if I take this on, I will fail you in my other projects.
Perfectly stated.
And finally, phrase number 5. This might be the most critical tool for the chronic people pleaser whose brain short circuits in the moment. Let me get back to you on that.
This phrase doesn't actually decline the request. It is the neurological circuit breaker that enables you to decline it later.
Because the hardest part is the face-to-face ambush. Someone drops by your desk, they are staring at you. The social pressure is immense.
And your brain panic fires a yes before your conscious mind can even process the request. The reflexive yes.
The reflexive yes is the worst.
It is purely the amygdala talking. Let me get back to you. Buys you the most valuable commodity in boundary setting, time. It creates a temporal gap between the stimulus and the response.
So you can actually think.
Yes. It allows you to physically walk away, let your heart rate normalize, and shift the decision-making process from the emotional center of your brain to the prefrontal cortex, which handles logic and planning.
You check your calendar, you check your energy budget, and you construct a rational response.
Exactly.
Looking at this toolkit, what really fascinates me is what is entirely missing. Not a single one of these 5 phrases includes a lengthy, rambling justification.
Not one.
Yet my deepest instinct is to provide a 5-minute monologue explaining my rejection. Why are we so desperate to JD justify, argue, defend, and explain?
We over-explain because we are essentially putting ourselves on trial, and we're trying to offer the other person enough evidence to grant us an acquittal.
Wow. We think if my reason is catastrophic enough, they won't be angry with me.
Right. We are desperately seeking their permission to say no.
We want them to validate our boundaries so we don't have to feel the guilt of enforcing it ourselves.
Which is a losing game.
It really is, which transitions perfectly into the final phase of our deep dive. Having the vocabulary is merely the tactical layer. The strategic layer is developing the mental fortitude to tolerate the emotional fallout.
Specifically, the immense wave of guilt that crashes over you the second you deploy one of these phrases.
Yes. We need strategies for guilt-free boundaries.
To manage the guilt, we first have to fundamentally reframe what it means. In a traditional sense, guilt is a moral compass. If you steal a car or intentionally deceive your spouse, you feel guilt because you have violated a core ethical tenet.
It is a signal that you have committed a wrong. But if I tell my neighbor I can't water their plants this weekend because I'm exhausted, I haven't committed a moral crime. The universe isn't weeping over the plants.
Yet your brain produces the exact same neurochemical cocktail of guilt. Why? Because in the context of boundary setting, guilt is rarely a moral failing. It is simply a manifestation of empathy.
Empathy.
You care about your neighbor. You don't want them to be inconvenienced. The guilt just proves you aren't a sociopath.
That is a massive paradigm shift. The guilt isn't a red light telling me to stop and reverse my decision. It is just a flashing yellow light indicating that I am an empathetic person navigating a slightly uncomfortable social friction.
The operational rule here is that guilt should inform your awareness, but it must never dictate your actions. You can sit with the discomfort of disappointing someone without rushing to alleviate that discomfort by sacrificing yourself.
Once you can tolerate the guilt, you can implement the 5 actionable strategies the sources outline for maintaining these boundaries long term. Let's dynamically work through these.
Sounds good.
Strategy number 1. Know your priorities first. This acts as the filtration system for every request that comes your way.
A boundary without a priority is just an arbitrary wall. You need to clearly identify your anchors for the week. Perhaps your top 3 priorities are finalizing a quarterly presentation, attending your daughter's soccer games, and ensuring you get 7 hours of sleep to recover from a mild cold.
So when a request comes in, I'm not evaluating it in a vacuum. I am cross-referencing it against my anchors. If I join this optional committee, does it siphon energy away from my presentation, my daughter, or my sleep?
Exactly. When you frame it that way, a no to the committee is no longer a rejection of your colleagues. It is a fiercely protective yes to your daughter and your health. The guilt dissipates because your refusal is anchored to a higher, clearly defined value.
I love that. Strategy number 2 reinforces our discussion on over-explaining. Stop giving reasons. Embrace brevity.
Every extra word you add to a refusal dilutes its power. When you say, I can't, I have a commitment, you hold the line. If they ask what the commitment is, and the commitment is literally just you watching a documentary in your pajamas, you do not owe them that context.
Because the moment I say, I'm just staying in, they will judge whether my rest is more valuable than their emergency, and they will always vote for their emergency. Rest is a valid commitment.
Strategy number 3 is highly practical. Offer an alternative, but only if it is completely genuine.
This allows you to maintain your agency while still offering support. If my brother asks me to help him paint his entire house on Saturday and I don't want to lose my weekend, I can reject the how without rejecting the relationship.
How would you phrase that?
I could say, I can't give up my Saturday to paint, but I can come over on Sunday morning for 2 hours to help you tape the baseboards and bring you coffee.
Perfect. You dictate the terms of your generosity. But the critical warning in the sources is never to use an alternative as a coward's exit.
What do you mean?
Do not say, I'm busy this week, maybe next week, if you harbor absolutely no intention of helping next week. That is just kicking the anxiety can down the road, and it builds false hope that will eventually turn into real resentment.
So true. Be honest, even if it stings for a second. Strategy number 4. Practice the pause. We touched on this with our phrases, but it's about actively expanding that window between stimulus and response.
The strategy is to train your nervous system to tolerate silence. When someone makes a request, literally count to 3 in your head. Feel your feet on the floor, take a breath.
That 3 seconds feels like an eternity in the moment.
It does, but it is astronomically easier to turn a "let me check my schedule" into a no an hour later than it is to claw back a reflexive yes after you've already committed.
The pause saves you from the wrath of your future self. And finally, strategy number 5, start small. We are talking about neuroplasticity here.
Yes, rewiring the brain.
If you have been a pathological people pleaser for 30 years, the neural pathways for saying yes are paved like superhighways. The pathways for saying no are like overgrown dirt paths.
You cannot jump straight to the hardest challenge. You cannot set a massive paradigm-shifting boundary with a deeply critical enmeshed parent on day 1. Your nervous system will flood with panic, you will capitulate, and you will reinforce the belief that boundaries are impossible.
You have to build the no muscle by lifting 2-pound weights first.
Exactly. Find micro-opportunities where the stakes of social rejection are practically zero. Decline the store clerk asking for your phone number at the register. Just say, "No, thank you." Don't offer a fake number. Don't apologize.
And notice that the store does not collapse.
Right. Decline the upsell at the coffee shop. Let a non-urgent text message sit unread for 2 hours.
You are myelinating that new neural pathway. You are proving to your primitive brain that the word no does not result in death. Which leads us perfectly into the listener challenge for this deep dive.
We don't want you to just absorb this information and return to your default settings. We want behavioral change.
The challenge for you, the listener, is to identify one specific low to medium stakes situation in your life right now where you are currently saying yes or anticipating saying yes, but every fiber of your being wants to say no.
Maybe it's a recurring meeting where you contribute nothing. Maybe it's a neighbor who talks your ear off when you're trying to get to your car. Identify the target.
Then equip yourself. Select one of the 5 phrases from our toolkit. Write it on a Post-it note if you have to. That doesn't work for me. And then actually execute it this week.
Anticipate the physiological response. Your heart will beat faster. The guilt will spike. But push through the discomfort and deliver the phrase.
And then become an observer of the aftermath. Notice how the catastrophic fallout you predicted fails to materialize. Notice the profound influx of relief and reclaimed energy that follows.
Let's pull all these threads together. We've explored the deep evolutionary roots of our fear, the massive biological and professional taxes we pay for chronic compliance, and the precise words and strategies to reclaim our agency.
So, what does this all mean for the architecture of our lives?
It means we have to discard the cultural myth that boundaries are inherently selfish or defensive. A boundary is not a weapon you wield against the world. It is simply the operating manual for how people can successfully interact with you.
I love that. When you finally stop operating out of a fear of disapproval, your relationships actually become more authentic. You are no longer managing people, you are relating to them. Learning to say no doesn't turn you into a cold, isolated fortress. It makes you a sustainably generous friend, a highly strategic colleague, and a deeply present partner.
Because when you relentlessly prune away the deadwood of resentment-filled obligations, the yeses that remain in your life are vibrant. They carry real, profound weight.
Which brings us to a final thought. I want to leave you with something to mull over as you navigate your week. Consider the concept of opportunity cost and think back to the story of Maria, who lost her identity to endless accommodation. Think about the one specific thing you used to deeply love doing before your bandwidth was hijacked by everyone else's emergencies.
It could be a forgotten creative pursuit, a physical activity, or simply the profound luxury of sitting in a quiet room without an agenda.
If you utilize the tools we discussed today to reclaim just 10% of the time and energy you currently hemorrhage purely out of guilt, who could you become a year from now? What dormant skill could you master? What masterpiece, what relationship, or what profound sense of internal peace is waiting for you on the other side of your very next no?
Your energy budget is your life. Guard it fiercely.
We'll see you on the next deep dive.